"Sir, please step back." The officer's voice cracked the still morning air. In front of him knelt an old man in a worn uniform, clutching white flowers like they were the only thing anchoring him to the earth. His posture was bowed, but there was something solid in his presence, something that refused to break. "This is my son's resting place," the man said, voice trembling but steady. He wasn't a threat. He was a father saying goodbye, but the officer didn't see it. Not yet. His name was Richard Thompson, a retired staff sergeant. His coat, once sharp with creases, now hung loose on thin shoulders. His boots were scuffed. The medals once pinned proudly to his chest now lived in a box. He had come here, like he did every year on his son's birthday. Michael, a Marine, killed in action. Every year, Richard knelt at the grave with white flowers, remembering, speaking softly to the air. This year, he was a little slower getting up, a little weaker, but he made it. And he wasn't leaving until he said what needed saying. The officer stepped closer. "You're trespassing," he said. "This area is restricted outside ceremony hours." Richard nodded faintly. "I just need one moment to say I love you." He didn't yell. He didn't resist. But the officer didn't wait. A sudden buzz and Richard's body jolted. The taser hit square in the chest. He collapsed. Flowers scattered on the grass. A hush fell. Onlookers, caught between their cameras and their conscience, froze. A veteran had been knocked down for kneeling, not resisting, kneeling. Minutes later, the silence was broken, not by sirens, but by boots. Two Marines in dress blues marched into the cemetery. Posture perfect, expressions unreadable. One stopped beside the officer and stared him down. "What did you just do?" The cop, defensive, stammered. He was trespassing." The Marine's voice was cold steel. "That's Staff Sergeant Richard Thompson. 2 Purple Hearts, a Silver Star. He trained more of us than you've probably ever disciplined." He paused, eyes still locked on the badge. "You didn't ask who he was." Richard tried to sit up, one hand pressed to the earth like he could still feel his son beneath it. "When his mother died, I promised our Michael I'd come every birthday. I never said goodbye. I never could. And today is his birthday." The words caught in his throat. The flowers lay beside him now, petals crushed but not broken. He reached for them like they mattered more than anything else. Because they did. They were his final promise, still waiting to be kept. One of the Marines knelt beside him. Gently, he picked up the flowers and returned them to Richard's hand. His voice, when he spoke, barely rose above a whisper. "Sir, you're not alone." 4 words, quiet, simple, but they carried the full weight of brotherhood, of service, of something deeper than duty. Around them, people looked away from their phones. The officer fidgeted, unsure now. "I followed protocol," he mumbled. The words were hollow. "Protocol means nothing without respect," the Marine replied. From beneath his coat, the Marine pulled out a small box. Inside was a medal, Michael's, earned in battle, carried by a father, left here, not for memory, but for love. He held it out. The officer took it, hands shaking. His badge suddenly felt small, the weight of the medal immense. A woman in the crowd wept. A boy knelt and removed his cap. And somewhere across the cemetery, a lone bugler stepped forward. Taps began to play, slow and haunting. Each note cut through the noise and echoed in the heart. The officer stood still, lifting his cap as the last note faded into the morning air. Richard stood now, with help from the Marines. He looked down at the grave. Sergeant Michael D. Thompson, USMC, beloved son, hero. His voice cracked. "Birthday's over, son. Until next year." Then he smiled, not wide, not triumphant, but a quiet smile, etched with pain and pride. Because love doesn't fade, it stays, in rituals, in scars, in old men who still keep their promises. And in that silence, something changed. The Marines didn't leave. They didn't salute and march off. They stood beside Richard, not as officials, but as brothers. They knew what it meant to honor the fallen, to show respect where it was due. Because respect, once shown, doesn't fade. It only changes form. And in a world quick to judge and slow to listen, this moment stood still. Not ceremony, not protest, just truth. Quiet, undeniable, and long overdue. Now ask yourself, have you ever judged someone before knowing their story? Have you turned away from someone's pain because it looked inconvenient? Rules are necessary, but respect is essential. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever been misunderstood while carrying something heavy inside? And before we end, let us know where you're watching from. If this story moved you, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below. Let's remember those who gave everything, even when the world forgets why.